Welcome to the Check 6 podcast. I'm Michael Bruno, Executive Editor for Business at Aviation Week. 2026 is off with a bang. Every week so far, U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration have made some kind of market-moving, industry-shaping policy announcement, especially in regards to aerospace, defense, and aviation. And each one of these seemingly could dramatically change the marketplaces. One of these has been a new, surprising ban on foreign-made UAS and UAS parts. That is, for certain, targeting China's DJI, which enjoys a commanding lead in the U.S. marketplace, may I just add. But of course, like everything else, the devil is in the details, as we say here in America. And since the initial regulatory ban was unveiled by the Federal Communications Commission in late December, there have been several developments already. So what is banned? Why? When? What are the consequences for doing this? Is this a massive opportunity for U.S. UAS makers or a meaningless distraction? And how did we get here? Well, joining me to discuss all of this are two real experts in the field. Sally French is a widely followed expert on all things UAS with more than a decade in the business. She is FAA Part 107 certified and the founder of the Drone Girl Advisory Network. I know for a fact that is a resource center for more than a few Aviation Week editors. And we have Bill Carey, Aviation Week Senior Editor for Business Aviation. Among his many credits, Bill was the recipient of the National Business Aviation Association's Gold Wing Award in 2017 and 2022 for his reporting on drones and advanced air mobility. And he is the author of the book, Enter the Drones, the FAA and the UAVs in America, from 2016. So, Bill, let me start with you. Can you give us a state of play of the Trump administration's ban? What was announced and where are we with it?
Sure, Michael, and thank you for having me, and glad to be here with Sally French. The event that brings us all here today was an announcement by the Federal Communications Commission in December, on December 22nd specifically, that it had updated its covered list of prohibited equipment and services to include new foreign-made uncrewed aircraft systems and UAS critical components. The notification specifically referred to companies that were previously called out in the fiscal 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, and those were DJI and Autel Robotics. Autel has a location in the United States, but it's a Chinese, its parent company is a Chinese technology company. The FCC was tasked with publishing a list of communications equipment that's regarded as a threat to national security under the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act of 2019. And that was a response, if you may recall, to the uproar at the time over Hawaii, I think. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is a supplier of telecommunications equipment and other Chinese companies. And that legislation provided funding to the FCC for what has been described as a rip and replace program to eliminate equipment from Chinese suppliers to the U.S. Telecommunications industry. The National Defense Authorization Act required that within a year of its enactment, and this is in quotes, an appropriate national security agency should determine whether communications or video surveillance equipment produced by DJI and Autel Robotics pose an unacceptable risk to U.S. national security. And this is a drone ban that had been anticipated for some time, and certainly since the passage of the National Defense Authorization Act. But when it was finally announced by the FCC, the industry was taken by surprise by the scope of the prohibition to include apparently all foreign-made drones. And the FCC referred to a national security determination, which said that as a result of, and per the reasons summarized in this document, the U.S. government's executive branch interagency body with appropriate national security expertise is referring to the covered list all UAS produced in a foreign country, unless the Department of Defense or Homeland Security make a specific determination to the FCC that a given UAS or a class of UAS does not pose such risk. I kind of focused on some of the language of that determination because the National Defense Authorization Act specifically had referred to an appropriate national security agency to make this determination. And the language used by, in the ultimate decision was an executive level interagency body, whatever that may mean. But at any rate, I see this as the culmination of efforts by both Congress and two different Trump administrations over the course of years to blacklist products imported from China. So the rest of the story is that on January 7th, the FCC released a new public notice updating its December 22 notification to announce that an exemption for certain uncrewed aircraft systems and critical UAS components from the FCC's covered list. And that was based on the Department of Defense determination that certain UAS and UAS critical components, including on what's known as its blue SUAS list, qualify as domestic end drones under the, or either the drones that are on its blue UAS cleared list or that are considered domestic end products under the Buy American standard do not pose national security threats. And so these carve-outs exist only until January 1st of 2027, after which the original December 22, 2025 public notice applies again. So again, as I've been saying, this is kind of what I think is the culmination of years of efforts by the Congress and the Trump administration. I wrote back in October of 2020 under an article headline, "Fear-Based Politics Stifled Drone Innovation," DJI says. At the time, that was, I think, the introduction by Senator Rick Scott and others of the American Drone Security Act, which sought to prevent the use of Chinese-made drones, not only by federal agencies, but contractors who accept federal assistance, state and local emergency response agency, nonprofit organizations, high schools, and colleges. Back in 2019, during the first Trump administration, the U.S. Department of the Interior had temporarily banned the use of drones manufactured in China or with Chinese parts, which effectively grounded a fleet of 810 small drones. After a degree of independent testing, the Interior Department later approved the use of what then was called the Government Edition, which was a customized version of DJI drones, the most prevalent type of drones being used, but said at the time that didn't represent a long-term solution. So that brings us to where we are today. I think DJI is still prohibited. I would defer to Sally on some of the specifics, but again, this was long anticipated, although the scope was greater than the industry expected.
All right. Well, Sally, you're up. I mean, you have been writing about this, it seems like every day. You've cranked out some great analysis about what is actually banned and what was happening, who was banning it, the FCC versus what was it, Commerce Department, and you've got this great analysis about what it could or could not or may not do for U.S. UAS makers. So, what do you see happening here? Is this just like a sea change in the marketplace?
Michael, I hope this podcast has 2 hours for us to discuss. There is a lot going on here. And yes, Bill, you really summed it up in that, yes, the FCC did make this huge ban that I think was so much bigger than what so many people expected. We knew that the government was going after DJI and to some extent these other companies like Autel, but we did not see that they would ban all of these other foreign companies as well. You look at a company like Parrot, which is so big. They are based in France. You look at something like Auterion. I believe they're based in Switzerland. So all of these foreign entities that we would see as partners with the U.S. is to have that banned was really shocking. Of course, now with all those exemptions about if a drone is blue UAS approved, then it's exempt, which really does open up at a lot of foreign made drones. That's really compelling. But I think the wildest thing about this whole ban on drones is that it is applicable to drones that do not yet have FCC approval. If the drone has FCC approval, then it is good to sell, it is good to buy, to fly, all of that. And what I find fascinating is that DJI is a pro. They knew this was coming, and they got FCC approval for their lineup of drones coming out in 2026. So many people are concerned that they want to get their hands on the newest, latest, greatest drone, and our friends up in Canada will be able to get their hands on it, and maybe we won't. But the reality is that DJI has been planning to come out with a number of drones. The Avata 360 is the one that a lot of people are anticipating. That is this really cool camera drone that has a 360 camera on it, and also other products on the enterprise end. Things like the Agros T55, which is a critical agriculture drone. DJI already has FCC approval for those products, even though they have not technically launched yet. So it is critical to know that if you are an American and you're a company that wants to sell these drones, or you are a pilot who wants to buy these drones, you can still buy those. Meanwhile, other companies that are French, Swiss, that don't yet have those FCC approval, they can't sell their drones. But DJI can, because DJI had the foresight. That to me is what is so wild about this whole thing.
It sounds, though, as if the ban, though, is still looming out there. I mean, whether it's DJI's got this sort of, not exemption, but they got ahead of the curve.
They got ahead of the curve.
We've got the blue list and all that, but that's only for another year. So ostensibly 2027 beyond is when you could really start to see the effect of this. And let's just imagine for a moment that you take the ban at face value and say all foreign are banned. Sally, what does that mean to the users? What does it mean to the pilots, and what does it mean for U.S. industry?
Michael, if we are taking it at face value, then yes, this would be devastating for the American drone industry. And not the drone industry, but people who rely on drones. These are things like police departments, other public safety agencies. In fact, I live in San Francisco, and our police department has been using drones wonderfully. One of my top ways that police departments use drones is that they've said, we no longer do car chases. They are dangerous for the police officers. They are dangerous for random civilians on the street. We don't need to do car chases anymore because we can do a drone chase. And that is so much safer because a drone can fly as the crow flies wherever it needs to. And we have really cut back on crime simply because police departments are using drones. Now, keep in mind, police departments are funded by you, the taxpayer, and a DJI drone that these police departments are using can cost less than $2,000. The equivalent American-made drone is something that could cost $20,000. And so keep in mind, that is not someone else paying for that. That is you as a taxpayer for paying for that. And so what is going to happen is that we will still have police departments able to use these existing fleets of DJI drones. You think about something like the DJI Mavic 3 enterprise drone is something that you might see a police department using. That has FCC approval, and police departments are, at least under current law, able to buy and fly those drones until the end of time. What becomes challenging is right now we're on the Mavic 3 enterprise, but what comes out when all the other countries, like the Canadian police departments, are using the Mavic 7 10 years from now, and our police departments would not be able to buy the Mavic 7. They can go on with the Mavic 3, but tech is going to be so much better, and we've seen drone tech evolve amazingly in just a few years. So what this is going to do is put America behind all the other countries that have more advanced drone tech that the U.S. is not able to have access to, unless, of course, we do have some sort of industry that springs up in the U.S. and is able to build comparable drones.
Okay, so let's get there and talk about it with both of you. Like U.S. industry, does this mean that AeroVironment and any of these other companies are just, suddenly this is like a golden opportunity?
This is an absolute golden opportunity for existing American-made drone companies, and there are so many out there. I imagine a company like Skydio has a huge leg up. They also have people involved in their company who are also involved in politics, so they really do stand to benefit from this. I look at all those drone companies that are based in the U.S., and they really will get the benefit. The challenge is that we just know the cost of living in the US is higher. The cost to assemble parts in the US is higher. And so all these, as I mentioned, police departments, if they want to go with an American company, they will have to spend more money on these products. I'm not entirely confident that the costs will come down. If something like Skydio wanted to lower their prices to compete with DJI, then they would have done that. There's no reason to believe that something like Skydio will lower their prices because DJI is not a competitor. So I am happy that we have opportunities for American drone companies to sell their products. I am just concerned that there is no demand out there for $20,000 drones at the scale that this law is anticipating.
Sally, I wanted to ask you kind of a more fundamental question is, why are DJI drones considered superior to other drones? And I know that you review different drone models, you fly those models, more so than just, manufacturing efficiencies. For instance, my brother has a Skydio drone. He loves it. It has follow me function and high res camera and all that. But why does DJI control 70% of the world market for small drones? I mean, is it the camera technology? Is it the gimbal technology? Is it the operating system? Why?
You mentioned your brother has the Skydio drone. Did you know that Skydio no longer makes consumer drones?
Exactly. As of 2023, they got out of the business. Yeah, for consumer drones, they're working for the military.
So Skydio said, we don't see a future for us in the consumer drone department because DJI does it well and they can undercut us in cost. So we are going to get out of the business. And I also love Skydio drones, or their consumer drones, which I had flown them. Wonderful product. And I have nothing negative to say. I would buy a Skydio drone if I could. But I can't because Skydio stopped making them. And there is a long history of American consumer drone companies that have got into this space and tried and failed. So some of the top examples of these are 3D Robotics. They were a Berkeley-based company, and they made a drone that had a number of technological issues with that drone. We had GoPro, which we all perceived GoPro as being a very high-quality company. Their action cameras are excellent. They tried to make a drone, and the drone had so many technical issues, they had to recall the drone so many times that they finally just stopped making the drone. And then we have Skydio. What I would say that's the other really top consumer drone maker. And Skydio is the one company that I think truly made an excellent product, but they just said, we're out of the business. So the reality is DJI has no other competitors that make an excellent product. And I do think DJI drones are very reliable. They're safe to fly. They have lots of fail safes built in them. I would highly recommend anyone who is new to drones to have a DJI drone because it's going to be a safe, easy, user-friendly workflow. That doesn't necessarily mean I think DJI is dominant in a sense that no one else could come in and be dominant. But I have seen so many companies try to come in and be dominant. Skydio was probably the best bet. And they said, never mind, we're out. So I would welcome Skydio to come back and make consumer drones. Skydio, if you're listening, please make a consumer drone. I would buy it.
I want to follow up with both of you. We are getting near the end of the podcast, but I got one more question for both of you. And Sally, I'll just start with you because you were just speaking and sort of alluded to this, but a Chinese company here with China as the backer of it, you've written they don't necessarily have to take this sitting down, right? They can respond to it. There can be other changes that happen in the marketplace simply because China has this overwhelming commanding position.
Yes, and that is where all of the geopolitical stuff comes in. And I have no doubt that China is going to push back. DJI is going to push back. This story is far from over. And the reality is it changes every single day. And there is so much else that goes into lots of deep history on trade restrictions and policies and all that. But it is absolutely certain that China is going to push back on this.
And Bill, you've written about this, you cover it, you've watched UAS in Washington, develop as a major issue. It's taken, part of the National Defense Authorization Act and the FAA acts. And oh my gosh, we can expect more to come, right? There's more regulation. There could be more lawmaking. In fact, some of this may require lawmaking. Where do you see this going?
I'm happy and thank you for mentioning the book I wrote, which came out in 2016. And I tried to time that to coincide with what was expected to be the proliferation of small drones in U.S. domestic airspace. And that was kind of heralded by the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012, when the language of that legislation said the expectation was to, have full integration into the national airspace system by 2015. That never happened. And, my suspicion all along is that the FAA would just wish drones would go away. They certainly, given everything we've heard lately about the air traffic control system, they'd rather not have to deal with them. And it certainly, they've made the case for having a third-party air traffic management providers for drones under 400 feet. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But only, we still have not seen a beyond line of sight regulation from the FAA. And so where are we now? 2025. I mean, the expectation, back in 2012 was that we'd be seeing, the skies would be darkened with, small unmanned aircraft, uncrewed aircraft systems by 2015. That just doesn't happen. And this is just all part and parcel of a long, painful, drawn out integration of uncrewed aircraft systems into the national airspace system.
Well, I just got to say that delights me. It makes me happy because it means we have a story to cover this year that's just going to be a gift that keeps on giving.
We are all going to be busy.
That's right. That's great. We love job security like that. Well, Sally French, the drone girl, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to having you back. If you would come back and join us. And Bill, of course, our resident Aviation Week UAS expert. Thank you both for joining me here on Check 6. For our listeners, thank you for joining us. Please go check out other Aviation Week podcasts. We've got plenty of other ones, and they're all just as interesting as this one. And who knows, you might learn something and meet some new expert guests as well. And with that, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.